All right, diving right in today. We've got a request that's less about a specific topic and more about, well, a relationship dynamic.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, and one I bet a lot of our listeners can relate to. What's it really like to date someone uh, deeply immersed in the music world?
Ooh, that's a good one. Lots to unpack there.
You got it. And our listeners are not alone in wondering either. Based on like the articles and research they send, there's some fascinating insights here about navigating love and music.
It's almost like, well, think of a symphony. There's the surface beauty, right? The melodies we all love, but then there's this whole intricate world behind the scenes shaping the performance.
Totally. And speaking of behind the scenes, you provided some killer sources to guide us.
Mm-hmm.
We've got relationship advice, like specifically tailored for this dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
Those FAQs that always seem to hit the nail on the head.
Right.
And even some peeks into how industry pros, like Tech Tycoon and Chief Distro, see things from their side of the music biz.
And you know what's interesting? No matter which source you look at, one thing's consistent. You can't separate the musician from the music. That creative energy, it's not like an on-off switch. It's just part of who they are.
So let's tune into this musician's mindset then. One quote that stuck with me, it described a musician's mind as being constantly swirling with melodies.
Makes sense, right?
Totally. But imagine trying to have a deep convo with someone who's got a whole symphony brewing in their head.
Yeah, no wonder those guides talk about musicians seeming absent-minded.
Exactly. It's like they're not trying to be distant, it's just how their brain is wired.
Like an athlete in the zone, sometimes the music takes over and everything else kind of fades out.
Doesn't mean the relationship is doomed, though.
No, not at all. But it's about understanding this and, like, adapting. The guides suggest some practical stuff like leaving notes or using shared calendars so you're both on the same page. And most importantly, don't take those moments of disconnect personally.
Oh, for sure. I've definitely heard stories about, like, musicians missing appointments or spacing out mid-conversation. But, yeah, it's not malicious. It's...
Just how they are.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it often ties right into the next big thing time.
You said it. A musician's life doesn't exactly fit a 9-to-5 schedule.
Nope. We've got that musician's schedule breakdown in the docs you sent.
Right.
And it is intense. Rehearsals, recording, gigs, promo stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And that's all before even thinking about a tour.
Exactly. And the guides are really clear that this lifestyle, it takes a certain type of partner, someone flexible, understanding of last-minute changes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is key, okay, with being apart for stretches of time.
Because some sources even mention tours lasting weeks, even months at a time.
That's a big one.
I mean, could you handle that kind of distance?
Yeah.
Something to ponder. Yeah. But even when they're not on the road, there's another layer to this, the whole emotional intensity of the creative life.
Yeah, Tech Tycoon puts it really well. He says living with a passionate artist is like riding a roller coaster.
Uh-huh. I could see that.
Huge highs from, like, breakthroughs, successes, but then also lows from creative blocks, industry pressures, all that.
You know, reading through this stuff, it's striking how often musicians are compared to, like, finely tuned instruments themselves.
Oh, totally.
Their emotions are right there, ready to be played. The guides are big on not taking their reactions personally.
Right. It's not about you. It's just how they process everything.
Support is key then, not trying to, like, control those feelings.
Exactly. And sometimes those highs, they spill over into other areas of life too, if you know what I mean.
Oh, I know what you mean. But we should probably move on.
Haha, probably right.
Okay, so we can't talk about musicians without addressing the big one, fame. From the relationship guys to the industry folks, it keeps coming up.
It's important to understand why, though. Fame brings its own set of challenges. Paparazzi, fans, even just trying to have a normal date.
Yeah, boundaries become crucial.
Absolutely. All the sources are big on open communication about privacy, what's okay, what's off limits. And not just for the musician, for both of you. Fame impacts the whole relationship.
So are you ready to share your life, even indirectly, with the public?
Big question to consider.
It really is. But even if your partner's not a household name, there's still the behind-the-scenes stuff of the music industry.
And that's where Chief Distro's perspective is so valuable. He talks about how the music world, it's competitive, almost cutthroat. Pressure to produce hits, financial instability from touring, the power dynamics with labels and managers.
Yeah, even if you're not directly involved, that pressure spills over.
Yeah.
Imagine your partner coming home drained, not from a creative high, but from a brutal contract negotiation.
That's rough, and that's why the guides emphasize empathy. It's not about fixing their problems, it's about understanding where they're coming from.
Totally.
But this all leads to the question, how do you, as the partner, make sure you don't get lost in all of this?
Hmm.
Good question. That's where the advice about having your own identity comes in. Your musician's relationship briefing, it even mentions that it's a balance between giving and receiving support. Can't be all one-sided.
Right, like a healthy relationship needs space for both people to grow.
And the sources are spot on about musicians often being very independent people.
So respecting that independence is key. Imagine you've got your own demanding career. How would you juggle that with a musician's schedule and all the emotional stuff that comes with it?
That's a real puzzle. And speaking of challenges, let's talk about trust.
Oh, trust. Tech Tycoon nails it when he says that trust is the foundation in a relationship with a musician, especially with all the missed calls, late nights, rumors, and everything.
And the FAQ section goes deep on jealousy stemming from the musician's professional relationships, that closeness with collaborators, especially if those collaborators are, well, attractive singers or whatever.
They're tough to navigate.
It can be. That's where openness is huge E. Talk it out, don't let it fester.
Absolutely. So picture this, your partner's writing songs with this amazing vocalist.
Okay, yeah.
How would you approach that? What reassurances would you need?
That's where open communication is so important.
Totally. But amidst all this serious stuff, gotta acknowledge, dating a musician isn't all doom and gloom, right?
Definitely not.
The sources do point out some serious perks to this lifestyle. Concerts, parties, maybe some cool travel.
It's more than just the fun stuff, though.
You're so right, it goes way deeper.
The real reward, I think, is being part of the creative journey. Imagine hearing a song for the first time, knowing the story behind it, the emotions in it.
That's a connection you just don't get as a regular fan.
Exactly. And for music lovers like you, that's got to be huge. It's like a VIP pass to the creative process. You see the raw talent, the vulnerability, all of it.
It's like they light up the stage, and some of that spills onto you. But let's be real, there will be times when that light dims a little. Creative blocks, the industry throws a curveball.
Yeah, that's when the partner's role gets even more important.
Right, like being that source of stability, that safe harbor.
You become the steady rhythm section to their lead guitar solo.
Ooh, I like that analogy. Even the most talented musician needs a solid foundation to build on. But that foundation, it can't be built on sacrifice alone.
Exactly. Our briefing highlighted this. It's got to be balanced. Can't be all about giving to the musician's needs. You, as the partner, you deserve to be nurtured too.
Goes back to that whole maintain your own identity thing.
Totally. Musicians are often drawn to people who have their own lives, their own passions, people who can hold their own.
It's a cool dynamic.
Yeah.
Where both people are growing, contributing something unique. Not two halves making a whole, but two whole individuals choosing to, like, intertwine their melodies.
I love that. That's really what it's about. And speaking of the complexities of love and music, the sources talk a lot about understanding the artistic temperament.
Oh yeah, the infamous artistic temperament.
Which can be a nice way of saying mood swings, intense emotions, maybe a little drama.
It's not always easy to handle.
It's key to remember their emotions are often tied to their creative output. Like, a bad review might sting more than for someone else. Or a creative block can feel like a full-blown crisis.
So the partner needs to be ready for that, right?
Yeah.
The sources say don't take it personally, but
Easier said than done.
totally. It takes practice.
It does. It's about understanding their language, the language of music and emotion. Sometimes they just need to vent, have their feelings validated.
Like being a sounding board, a
Yeah.
safe space.
Exactly. But what about when those feelings involve other people?
Ah, you're talking about jealousy.
Yeah, the big one. Especially relevant when their world is full of close collaborations.
And the sources, those FAQs especially, they really dig into this.
Yeah.
They acknowledge that it's natural to feel a twinge of jealousy when your partner's, spending late nights writing with someone who's also ridiculously attractive and talented.
Right. Human nature. And the advice, communication is key. Talk it out, set boundaries that work for both of you.
Yeah, bottling things up just leads to resentment.
It's like a dissonant chord that keeps repeating, messing up the whole song.
Totally. Communication is vital, but it's not magic. It takes effort from both sides.
Absolutely. The musician needs to be sensitive to their partner's feelings, even if they don't fully get it.
And the partner needs to be realistic. You can't expect a musician to suddenly become a hermit who only interacts with instruments. It's all about that balance, right?
Finding that sweet spot between their passion and your needs, their independence, and your desire for connection.
It really is a delicate dance. What strikes me is how much of this applies to any relationship, not just musicians.
I totally agree. Communication, empathy, respecting each other's needs, that's universal.
So even if you're not dating a rock star, this stuff is still valuable. It's about understanding the human heart with all its messiness and beauty.
Isn't that what makes life interesting? We're all a bit like musicians, trying to compose our own melodies, hoping to find someone who can really hear the music in our souls.
That's beautiful. But before we get too philosophical, we still have more to cover in this deep dive. What do you say we shift gears and explore whether this whole dynamic is actually a good fit?
I'm ready when you are. Let's tackle the big question. Is dating a musician right for you? That's the million-dollar question, right? And from what I'm seeing, the sources are pretty much on the same page here. There's no easy yes or no. It really comes down to your needs, what you want in a relationship.
So, like, step one is some serious self-reflection.
Exactly. What are your non-negotiables? What are you willing to, be flexible on?
Because the guides don't sugarcoat it.
Hmm.
They say if stability, predictability, that's your top priority. If you're someone who needs a partner home for dinner every night,
A musician might not be the best fit.
unless, of course, that musician is retired and giving piano lessons from their living room. But seriously, if routine and consistency are crucial for you, this might not be the right path.
And that's totally okay. Better to know that up front than try to force something that's not there.
For sure. Yeah. But on the flip side, if you are drawn to passionate, creative types, if the whole energy of the music world gets you excited, if you're cool with some spontaneity.
Well, then this could be an amazing adventure.
Okay, so let's say you are on board for the roller coaster. What I'm hearing is it's still not a guarantee of smooth sailing. We've talked about the challenges, and they're real, right?
Oh, very real. The guides are upfront about that. You got to go in with eyes wide open. Being honest with yourself, can you really handle the demands of this kind of relationship?
Like a great point. Because love, powerful as it is, it's not always enough to make a relationship work. It takes more.
Absolutely. Compatibility, shared values, that willingness to grow together.
All crucial.
But what I find fascinating is how those universal needs play out in this specific context. Like, what does it mean to be compatible with a musician? Beyond just liking their music, I mean.
That's a good question. I think it goes deeper, right? Understanding their world, their creative process, the highs and the lows.
It's about celebrating their wins without feeling threatened, being their rock when they face setbacks, being their biggest cheerleader, the person who sees beyond the stage persona, all that.
That's beautiful. And from what I'm getting from the sources, it also takes a certain kind of selflessness. Being able to put their needs first sometimes, knowing they'll do the same for you down the line.
It's true partnership. And the sources are honest about this. Dating a musician means accepting that the music, it's always going to be there, part of their life and therefore part of yours.
Almost like an invisible third member of the relationship, huh?
It can feel that way sometimes, but it doesn't have to be negative. If you approach it right, it can actually make the connection stronger in ways you might not expect.
It's like some guides put it. You get to experience music not just as a fan, but as someone who gets it, who understands the heart and soul poured into it.
Exactly. Sharing in the creative journey, discovering new music together, feeling the energy of their shows, seeing their dreams unfold.
It's pretty special.
It is. But we've focused a lot on the musician's needs, how a partner can support them. What about the other side of that? What are the challenges partners often face? How can they navigate those?
Yeah, good point. This isn't a one-way street. The guides, especially, they offer some good insights there. One of the biggest ones, dealing with the unpredictability.
Oh, yeah. It's not just the trouble, the late nights. It's the emotional roller coaster that comes with the creative process itself.
So, like, your partner pours their heart into a new song, then some critic trashes it.
Or they hit a creative block and feel totally lost.
Tough moments. And I'm sure it's hard on the partner, too, like riding that emotional roller coaster right with them.
The guides suggest a few things. First, remember what we talked about, don't take it personally. Their mood often reflects their creative process, not how they feel about you.
Key distinction. Offer support, understanding, but don't absorb every single mood swing.
Right. Another tip, encourage healthy coping mechanisms. If they only rely on you to process every high and low, it burns both of you out.
So it's helping them find balance, nurturing their creativity, but also prioritizing their, mental and emotional well-being.
Exactly. That might mean encouraging them to connect with other musicians, finding a therapist who gets the creative mind, maybe exploring mindfulness practices to stay grounded.
I like those. Not about controlling their emotions, but giving them tools to manage those ups and downs.
Now, another challenge, and we touched on it before, is jealousy.
Understandable.
Yeah.
When their world is full of these close collaborations, often with other attractive, talented people, It's tough.
And the guides offer some strategies here. First and foremost, communicate. Don't let it fester. Talk it out honestly.
Bottling things up never helps.
And remember, two-way street. The musician has to be sensitive to their partner's feelings. Reassure them.
That might mean setting boundaries, being open about their collaborations, just making an extra effort to prioritize quality time together.
Finding that balance again.
Balance is key, huh? Seems like a theme in this whole dynamic.
It really is. Which brings us to another challenge partners face. Holding on to their own identity.
Makes sense. It's easy to get swept up in their world, the excitement that demands everything.
Yeah.
But it's so important for the partner to have their own life, too. Their interests, passions, friendships.
The guides are adamant about this. They even say, if you become just another instrument in their orchestra, you lose your own unique sound.
It's about being a duet, not a backup singer.
Exactly. And it takes effort. Prioritizing your goals, making time for your hobbies, nurturing those connections outside the relationship.
Sounds like a lot to juggle on top of everything else. Any practical tips from the sources on how partners can stay grounded, maintain that independence?
Oh yeah, they offer some good advice. One common one is to set clear boundaries from the get-go.
Makes sense. Sets the foundation for good communication, prevents resentment later on.
Talk about your needs, your expectations, your non-negotiables, and be honest about what you can handle and what you can't.
And it's not just about what you're willing to do, but also what you're not willing to compromise on.
Totally agree. It's fine to set boundaries around personal space, time with loved ones, your career aspirations. A healthy relationship means both people thrive, not just one.
I think there's this idea that dating a musician is all glamour, excitement. But what I'm hearing is it takes work, understanding, communication.
You got it. It's a unique dynamic, for sure. Incredible highs, but very real lows, too.
And knowing what those lows might be, the emotional stuff, the jealousy, the challenges of staying true to yourself that's vital before jumping into this world. It's less about fitting some mold, more about knowing yourself, right? Strengths, needs, limits.
Yeah, good way to put it. It's not about checking boxes. It's a deeper kind of alignment. Which brings us back to the core question of this whole deep dive. Is this the right relationship for you?
All this info we've unpacked, it's like a really multi-dimensional picture now.
It is. We went from that initial dating a musician idea to a pretty honest look at the realities.
Because if you're considering this, got to be equipped to make a good decision.
Right. Informed decision. And it's not just the big hurdles, time, jealousy, the industry stuff. It's the smaller everyday things, too.
Oh, totally. The sources get into some of those.
Yeah.
Like, what if your partner needs total silence to compose, but you need background noise? Or they're a night owl, get creative at 2 a.m., but you're an early bird who needs 8 hours of sleep.
Yeah. Those little things can add up if you're not ready.
Deeper compatibility than just shared interests.
Respecting each other's rhythms, literally and figuratively.
And that willingness to compromise, find solutions. Maybe it's designated quiet times, separate sleeping arrangements.
Teamwork, communication, a little humor goes a long way.
Not one person sacrificing, but both people thriving.
Exactly. Which brings us back to something the sources keep saying. Don't lose yourself in all this.
Maintaining your own identity. Easy to get swept up in their world and become the super fan, but
You gotta have your own things going on. Interests, passions, friends. One source put it really well. If you become just another instrument in their orchestra, you lose your own unique sound.
got to be a duet, not a backup singer.
Right. That keeps things interesting. And it prevents resentment, too. If you're always sacrificing, that imbalance causes problems.
Like the guides say, you need your own life to bring something new to the relationship.
So true. Two whole people choosing to share, not two halves trying to become whole.
I love that. Leads to something I've been thinking about. All this talk about supporting the musician, but who supports the supporter?
Oh, that's important, and the sources do touch on it. It's got to go both ways. The partner deserves love, care, attention, too.
Easy to get lost in their world and forget the partner's on that roller coaster, too, feeling those highs and lows.
And they might not have the music industry pressures, but they've got their own stuff going on.
So recognizing that, making an effort to be there for each other.
Open communication, expressing needs, setting boundaries. It's okay to say, hey, I need a break from the music. Movie night.
Good reminder. Not selfish to prioritize your own needs.
And having support outside the relationship helps. Friends, family, maybe a therapist who gets this whole dynamic.
That external support is huge.
Self-care is essential. Encourage each other to do things that bring joy, balance.
Fill your own cup so you have more to give.
Which leads to something else the sources talk about. supporting passion versus enabling unhealthy behaviors.
That's tricky. How do they separate those?
They talk about signs of burnout, addiction, mental health stuff that might be hidden by the artistic temperament. Support the whole person, not just the career.
Knowing when to step back, say, this isn't okay, I can't support this. Love with boundaries.
Being a partner, not an enabler. Tough line to walk.
It is. But it comes down to wanting what's best for them, even if it means tough talks or firm boundaries.
Powerful message for our listeners. Dating a musician can be incredible. Passion, creativity, adventure. But it's not easy.
Takes understanding, a willingness to roll with the punches, and that commitment to both your individual needs and the relationship's health.
If you can do all that, find that balance between passion and practicality, independence and togetherness. Who knows what amazing music you might make together.
Beautiful way to put it. Thank you so much for this deep dive.
My pleasure.
And to you, listener, thanks for joining us. Hope this gave you some insights, some food for thought as you navigate relationships. Knowledge is power, and understanding is key to harmony, no matter who you're with.